if everything went under, if people just said fuck skiing, skiing's stupid, it's all about fucking hacky sack or whatever, right? The worst thing that happens, their executives take their golden parachutes, fuck off, and they go join another company. The workers are then thrown out onto the unemployment lines. If you've ever been to Colorado, it's probably because you came to hit the slopes, to hit the ski range or whatever the fuck. What we have here in Colorado is a problem with kind of the corporate consolidation of ski companies and kind of the infrastructure of towns. And I think I put in the title of the stream, Corpos killing towns. And this is broadly what happens when you see the gentrification. I don't even know if it's gentrification. It's the takeover of these large corporations to towns. This is, and whenever we talk about capitalism and the dogged what's the word I'm looking for? What am I thinking? Pursuit of profits. This is what we're talking about. There is no concern for the local communities, no concern for the local wildlife, no concern for basically anything else except the profits of this or that corporation. So let's take a look at this in the context of the ski resorts that we have here in the lovely state of Colorado, shall we?
Town. Legally, at least. So is this and this and this. Each displays the characteristics of an idyllic small town community, but largely in the same way Main Street did. This is
I realized I didn't hit the transition button.
Legally, at least. So is this and this and this. Each displays the characteristics of an idyllic small town community, but largely in the same way Main Street Disney displays the characteristics of an idyllic small town community. These were towns. They were vibrant communities filled with average Americans living their mountain dreams, but they've been gutted. They've had their cores ripped out by economic forces from afar, leaving only a shell propped up by the resilient few willing to fight to keep the dream alive. North American ski towns are peppered across remote corners of the continent's least populous regions, yet for 4 months in the winter and 3 in the summer, they become bustling destinations with jets, both public and private, shuttling in thousands of visitors from—
Oh, this shit is the fucking worst also. Like, living in Colorado, you will see during the kind of like snowy months, all this fucking traffic and all the fucking tourists that come in. Such a pain in the ass.
California, Texas, Florida, and beyond daily, each on a brief reprieve from urban life to soak in the crisp, light mountain air. For the 5 other months of the year, though, these verge on ghost towns. In Breckenridge, for example, just 20% of housing units are occupied by full-time residents.
Jesus Christ. So keep in mind, okay, so you've probably heard a leftist of some form say we need to decommodify the housing market. And, we need to offer more solutions for people in terms of housing. And this is a perfect picture of kind of the problem, right? Because all of these houses, how many of them have, electricity running through them, resources to actually build the houses, all the rest of this stuff. And yet it all goes to fucking waste. What we could be doing with all of these houses while the people here own them and only show up during one season of the year. This is where our problem around the commodification of housing comes from. Or at the very least, this is a symptom of that problem, I should say. Because we treat housing like any other good or service when it's not. Housing is how we keep communities together, how we keep people in, sustainable, like living situations. People who are homeless, who have lost their homes, stay that way because, this might be a crazy revelation. They don't have a home to go to. They don't have anywhere to put down roots and be able to return to somewhere, to take consistent showers, to consistently sleep somewhere and not be worried about food insecurity. There's a lot of things that especially in like Breckenridge. I don't know if they have a huge homeless problem. They most likely don't. But if there was ever an example of like we could be using these resources much better than we are now, than having them just sit here and there's only people living in these, and these are not cheap houses, by the way, a couple months out of the year. It's ridiculous.
Meaning, in those 5 months of off-season, neighbors aren't next door, they're on the next block. With the infrastructure to support more than 5 times the population, streets simply sit empty. On the other side of the Saguache Range, in Crested Butte, only 14 of 43 restaurants kept open through the last spring off-season, and even of those, many kept drastically reduced hours and limited menus for the limited local covers. And across the Elk Mountain Range in Aspen, even the airport closes for its theoretically irregular, but in practice annual 2-week runway maintenance procedure. One could assume that this soullessness is the inevitable byproduct of life in a remote tourism-based economy, but history hardly supports this view. Well, today it appears that there's some sort of fundamental incompatibility.
And like, look at this. Honest to God. All of these resources, all of the wood, all of the workers, all of the everything to build up this, nice looking area. This is nice looking. But how much, how expensive are any of these houses, these townhouses here on the left, any of these, little mini mansions? This is a community that now is just a service neighborhood to incredibly rich people. And a lot of the people who own these, this is like their vacation home or whatever. So what do? They don't really pay as many times, they don't shop at the local places as much. They don't spend their money in town. Only really for a very small window do they actually spend any of those riches on the neighborhood that they've bought this house in. More and more, the more I think about it, the more I'm convinced that we really just shouldn't allow people to own more than, honestly, possibly one house, unless there's some extenuating circumstances. More and more, I come with the feeling of like, no, fuck that. No, you do not need like a fucking winter house and a summer house. No, fuck yourself. There's no need for that. Or at the very least, just tax them hard as shit.
The very fact that they're called ski towns demonstrates that there was once a time when it was all possible. There was a time when a remote mountain town could just have a ski area. In the early days, the resorts were not what gutted the communities, but
I can't tell if this is like a filter, if this is... That looks like...
No, that looks like North America, blessed with consistent snowfall and north-facing slopes were ski towns, they were boom towns gone bust. Aspen, Telluride, Crested Butte, Breckenridge, Park City, all mining towns whose best days were behind them. Or they were rugged resource towns run on logging like Truckee and Revelstoke. Or, like Vale and Snowmass Village, they weren't towns at all, just ranch land and old mining claims. But one by one, they all blossomed into ski towns. And whether it was Austrian expats helping lay rope tows in the 30s and 40s, 10th Mountain Division veterans drawing up plans in the 50s and 60s, or developers and local boosters dreaming up lift lines and base villages in the decades since, skiing offered a lifeline to communities on the verge of collapse. From the start,
Who would own the houses during the off-season? Do you mean when what I was saying earlier, or who owns them now? Because the people who own them now, they're just not there. Just not there using up resources.
Ski business was pretty simple. Offer lift services, groomed managed terrain, and on-mountain restaurants, like a theme park would, and charge a daily fee for the services, like a theme park would. Employ the established locals to build new hotels and housing to keep up with increasing traffic. Employ eager new arrivals hoping to become locals in the ski school and ticket offices. Offer a season pass for locals and serious skiers to keep some cash on hand in fall and early winter. Pray for snow to draw in the day pass crowds, then reinvest those earnings in the summer into fancier lodges and amenities to get the higher dollar customers who didn't drive up from the nearest town, but flew in from the nearest city. The model wasn't unique. When the chance is presented, all industries look to corner the highest yield customers. It wasn't complicated either. Hope Mother Nature provided the goods and build out all the infrastructure, from housing and hotels to tram lines and terrain parks, to maximize earnings when she did. And it certainly wasn't flexible. The more terrain the resort added, or the more snowmaking it required, the more it charged for a day pass.
And this is also the thing. Okay, so call me a crazy socialist or whatever. You can call me whatever you want, but I also can't help but think that this is also emblematic, I think, of the mindset of constant growth. You see a lot of this with large corporations. There always needs to be this growth in sales, this growth in profits and everything else. And I just feel like this isn't always sustainable and certainly shouldn't always be, I think, the goal. If you told me like, oh, well, there are only, we built this many hotels, we stopped at a certain point, it's really hard to get into some of these places. I think I'd kind of be happier with that to a degree. Just so we're not taxing the local communities and taxing the local resources that would be there. I understand that there's the, but then less people get to ski. Well, there's a lot of other places to ski, and there's a lot of other places to, go do that activity all over the country. It's not just here. This video is specifically Colorado, but they're all over the country. But I can't help but think, the constant building up of these ski towns has really led to it's just unsustainable. I feel like it will drive up revenues for a long time until I just feel like it'll inevitably crash. I don't have anything to. That's just kind of a vibes check on me, but I don't know. You said you would want to limit housing to one person. People still need places to live while they're downhill skiing. Who would own the houses when people are not living in them? Oh, I don't know. It just like, I feel like it would be one of those things where you could probably put more like rentals maybe in or something like that, or maybe like controlled by like the community, something that's more community driven. I think would be good. Instead of having like instead of having some corpo running a resort, it could be a town run resort, a community run resort, one that that, as opposed to, I think, the your corporation, whatever, ski facilitator incorporated or whatever, instead of having them run a resort and constantly keep trying to increase profits and do all the rest of that stuff, you have it be community driven. I think the community building up a lot of housing and only having only building up what that community is willing to tolerate and leaving it up to them, I think would be better, in my opinion. I don't like to see these, if you live in a ski town, you grew up there, or you're born there, whatever, the people who are, indigenous to the area, not like indigenous people, but people who, started out there, that's their spawn point. Some kind of community option so that all of those resources, all of those taxes, all of those dollars go back into the community instead of going to, the large corporations that run these resorts. That would probably be my thing. Certainly build housing, but I would prefer it to be community controlled.
Competing for attention from the world's wealthiest, ski resorts added and built and added and built. The race to the top reinvigorated ski towns. Then, as land and housing ran low and popularity reached its zenith, it began to squeeze them.
Which we will kind of see the result of a little bit of that later.
For the 2000s until suddenly it didn't. The issue wasn't existential yet, but the trends and forecasts indicated that it could soon become so. Skier numbers reached their high point in the late aughts and early.
I heard a knock. Hello? Yellow. This? Sure. Oh, this keeps connecting to your phone? No, you're fine. I'm assuming it's off? Okay, yeah, I think it's off. Weird. Anyway.
Early 2010s, and then they plateaued. 2007 through 2010 were good years, some of the best, in fact, in terms of total ski days, but then the numbers fell. A similar pattern emerged in the number of individual skiers participating in the sport. From 2008 to 2016, the number of unique skiers in the US, or individuals that participated in the sport that year, topped out at 10 million and then began to drop.
Jesus. When was that? Can I see that chart like 2 seconds? Where is that?
10 million and then
2010. So we had like the crash in 08. Okay. It's kind of in the wake of the crash. Okay. And this is also the thing. If you're an executive, right? If you're on the board of any of any of these ski resort companies, do you know what happens when the industry like takes a huge hit? When if everything went under, if people just said fuck skiing's stupid, it's all about fucking hacky sack or whatever, right? If that happened, do you know what the worst thing that happens to one of these ski resort companies? Their executives take their golden parachutes, fuck off, and they go join another company. The workers are then thrown out onto the unemployment lines, and all of the infrastructure that's privately owned and has now been abandoned is now left to the for the locality to kind of deal with. And there's also going to be the issue of kind of, well, if they don't own it, they can't build on it. It just kind of has to sit there. Then their towns are completely stripped of all of their tourist economy due to those companies kind of facilitating a lot of that tourism. So that's also why I want a more community driven relationship of ski towns and their resorts.
Warm, dry weather was partly to blame, but weather alone wasn't a worthy excuse. Low snow
unfortunately, for any executive of literally any company, you will almost always you will always benefit from the success, and pretty much even in a company's worst year, they're going under everything else. You as an executive will not be bearing the brunt of that. The worker will bear the brunt, and the community in which you operate in will bear the brunt, but you will not. You will still make your millions. You'll get your golden parachute. You'll be fine.
All going to be a factor going forward anyway. Rather, the sport was just too expensive. Day passes were reaching $200, season passes well over $1,000. Making things worse, the people who had grown up on resort skiing were aging. The industry's race to the top made the sport entirely too expensive and too old. Then, Vail Resorts came and entirely reimagined the industry. Vail is a town, a manufactured Alps-like village bisected by Interstate 70, about an hour-and-a-half long drive from Denver. Vail's ski resort, understandably, towers over the town of Vail. But nowhere in this resort or this town will you find the offices of Vail Resorts, or MTN as it's labeled on the New York Stock Exchange. They're just not here. This is a sign of something bigger. That Vail Resorts, the company, has effectively decoupled itself from the physical ski resort, and in doing so...
Yeah, and they own and operate all of these, meaning that, again, if any of them ever go under, they're like, who gives a shit? They go under, who cares? The executives don't care. They're not at any of these locations. They stay wherever the fuck it is that they stay, whatever office that they're in, and that's it. They don't have to worry about any of it. Company, the company's stock or whatever goes down. That like kind of sucks, but again, considering you're an executive, you're already making on salary millions upon millions of dollars. It's not really a problem for you. And again, the worst thing that happens is, you get fired. Well, okay, well, again, here's your golden parachute. Whereas if you're a worker in this Stevens one up in the left corner here, and it closes down, guess what? You're out of a job. No paycheck, no parachute, no nothing. You're just unemployed, gone. Good luck finding another job, especially if you live in one of these towns. Get ready to fucking move.
So has transformed the industry. Since the early 2000s, Vail Resorts has owned and managed Vail, Beaver Creek, and Keystone in Colorado, along with Heavenly in California. This wasn't necessarily unique. KSL Capital, Powder, Mont Saint-Silver International, and even Sinclair Oil had all collected an arrangement of North American ski resorts. What Vail Resorts did that made it unique was that as ski numbers began to stagnate, it went on a spending spree. In 2012, the conglomerate bought 3 smaller resorts. In 2013, it bought the prestigious Canyons Resort in Utah. The following year, it bought Park City. Then it went international, purchasing an Australian resort. From 2016 to 2018, Vail went even bigger, taking over iconic resorts in Whistler Blackcomb, Stowe, and Crested Butte. In 2019, it bought Peak Resorts, which owned 17 areas across the Midwest and Northeast. In the face of worrying winters and aging skiers, Vail began scooping up resorts. Some of them tiny, some of them world-class, but all of them now available on a single season pass. To little fanfare...
Oh yeah, I probably should have started this by saying, and let me just state this for the record. Skiing, disgusting, bourgeois. Snowboarding, the winter sport of the proletariat.
Vail launched the Epic Pass in 2008, offering its buyers unlimited skiing at any of the 5 Vail-run resorts. And oddly, for a pass that boasted some of the best skiing in the Rockies, the price was low, very low, only $579 for an unlimited pass. For comparison, an Aspen Pass that same season, at its very cheapest, was $1,769, more than triple. Odder still, in the years that followed, as Vail bought up resorts,
and that's essentially what Walmart does too. Is you undercut your competition, and then you know, as you can
at least for the industry,
when you can take losses for a while.
For the first time in 2015, and still managing to stay under the $1,000 mark all the way through 2024. The Epic Pass was and is, in the world of skiing, a cheap season pass, but it was not a cheap product. It was an entirely new product. It wasn't meant for the hardened, ski-obsessed locals that hit the hill 100 days a season. It was for a market that had previously been served by day passes, multi-day punch passes, and those that had been priced out entirely. The 10 to 20-day-a-year skier of varying age, economic standing, and location. Now, the thinking went, a well-to-do business person in New York or Chicago or Boston could buy an Epic Pass and ski their nearby local hills every other Saturday and justify the purchase. If they wanted to ski in Colorado or Utah or British Columbia over a family vacation, they just had to get there. The skiing, at that point, would essentially be free. The penniless college kid who grew up skiing with their parents could ask for an Epic Pass for Christmas.
Who are these people? Okay, this is gonna be my class identity showing. Who the fuck are these people who like college kids who went skiing every single year with their parents? I've never met them. I don't know these people.
They'd fulfill their obligations to ski with family over Christmas, then could load up with friends and road trip Rockies resorts, staying in Airbnbs and avoiding prohibitively expensive
all of these things. All of this shit is expensive.
Young professional living in Denver, Salt Lake City, Seattle, San Francisco, Boston, or even LA and New York could buy the pass and split the expense of day-long or weekend-long trips to the mountains.
This is such an upper middle class
if they
cost
executed
too.
it right, what they'd lose in margins, they'd make up in volume, creating a new and loyal customer base that didn't sit on the sidelines priced out and didn't pay for day passes. As this graph of total Epic Pass product purchases suggests, they executed it right. And as this 2023 Investors Conference report from the company boasts, they've gotten
28th
really
to
good
29th.
at
Wow, this is
getting
recent.
customers to buy passes over lift tickets. But the impact was bigger than Vail Resorts. With Vail's Epic Pass and the emergence and maturation of a competitor, Alterra, and its Icon Pass boasting a similar...
Yeah, and this is and from a business standpoint, this is really good because you're incentivizing people to show up more by giving them a slightly larger cost than it would, you know, the one piece, you know, the one time you go up to the slopes, you know, or even if you go a couple times a year, it's like, hey, look, pay a little bit more than what you would to pay to go 3 times a year, pay a little bit more than that. And now you can go a ton of times. And it keeps the cost basically to get onto the slopes really low, which means you're going to be able to bring in a lot of people. Even shit, you're probably going to get a lot of people who don't even hit the slopes enough to outweigh their initial investment. They would have spent less just going and paying for day passes. But that's kind of the bet that they've made. It's smart business, certainly. Yeah.
Really impressive list of mountains.
Just kind of wanted to comment on that.
Skiing was suddenly reinvigorated as 2018-19 visitor totals finally broke the near decade-long trend of flattening numbers. By the following season, the Mega Pass's takeover was complete. For the first time on record, the share of ski days logged on season passes outnumbered those on day and multi-day tickets. Through consolidation under two major umbrella brands, skiing got a shot in the arm. It became younger, slightly more accessible, and far more flexible. And under the two brands, the ski industry reinvented itself. Alterra and Vail had stable, predictable income stemming from non-weather dependent pass sales, they had dependable cash flows to take on capital projects in the off-season, and they had bad weather insurance. If it didn't snow in one region, their losses would likely be canceled out by a good snow year somewhere else. Without being tied to a single mountain, Vail could turn its focus to real estate development at the base of Vail Mountain, or marketing strategies for when it just wouldn't snow, or building out the Epic brand.
Which let's be clear here. That's the thing that's like kind of the thing after a point, right? Like you sell the slopes and everything. That's kind of a, other than buying the land and the rights and everything else, that's kind of the really low cost part of it. Now it's like, all right, where do we invest this money? Do we invest it in wages? Maybe a little bit. But what we invested in is that fucking real estate. That's what we get. That's what we pump up. We pump up the jam on that fucking real estate.
In the process, as it sought to maximize profits for its shareholders,
maximize profits,
omnipresent in the areas
maximize profits.
It operates. Vail, the resort, is here, nestled in a tight valley sitting at the base of some of Colorado's tallest peaks. The nearest airport, given its need for flat land, is 35 minutes away here, although many visitors choose to fly into here, the far larger Denver International Airport.
DIA is a nice airport.
Either way, Vail Resorts has made sure it's convenient to actually get to Vail itself with its Epic Mountain Express, offering $99 shared shuttles for the 2-hour
Yeah. There's like an entire fucking line to get you straight to fucking Vail from DIA.
trip from Denver, or $49 ones for the quicker drive from Eagle County Airport. For those that would balk at the prospect of sharing a shuttle, they also offer $319 private SUVs on the same 35-minute drive. In all cases, as long as it's Epic Mountain Express, Epic Pass holders, of course, get rewarded with 20% off.
Oh my god, I never notice how often I see that fucking Epic logo. I see this shit every fucking where, but I've never looked into it.
But on the other end of the shuttle, visitors need accommodation, and Vail, of course, has that handled too. There are Vail-owned hotels, like the Lodge at Vail, there are other hotels bookable through Vail, or there are independently owned apartment and house rentals managed by Vail-owned Legendary Lodging. In all cases, Epic Pass holders get a discount once again. But to ski, one needs skis, so next up on day one is the rental shop. Vail has that handled at Vail Sports, which, once again, offers discounts for Epic Pass holders. But visitors also need jackets and pants and goggles and all sorts of non-rentable gear, so they could head to outposts of recognizable brands like Helly Hansen or Patagonia or the North Face. Yet, despite their branding, visitors are once again feeding money to the conglomerate, as these two are Vail-owned and operated franchise stores, part of more than 250 Vail-owned retail stores around the world.
And keep in mind, okay, so I mentioned earlier, like the reason why I have, why I want a community-driven, in terms of ski towns and resorts, a community-driven option. This is why. Because if you are a local restaurant, you are going to get overwhelmed by the amount of, Vail, Corpo restaurants competing with you and doing so at higher budgets. You just won't be able to compete. If you're a local, I don't fucking know, ski stick person, you're a ski stick technician, if you're like a local guy owning a shop, you aren't going to be able to compete with the prices and the discounts associated with like the Epic Pass people to bring in more customers. You're just not going to be able to do it. And eventually, when you get run out of your business, guess what happens? You now get to be an employee picking up a wage that's probably not nearly as nice or not nearly as dignified as you once had gotten from owning your own shop. You've essentially been pushed into the arms of this corporation by them just squeezing you out, by building so much around you and building everything around you that now you can't even compete. You just get rolled into their clockwork.
After that is dinner, which too can be accomplished without giving $1 to anyone but Vale at restaurants like
Oh.
Margie's House, then drinks at 10th Mountain at the Hythe Hotel. While skiing the next day, the trend can continue with dining at one of the dozens of Vale-run on-mountain restaurants, again with a discount for pass holders. Then, if the day ends and a visitor loves the lifestyle so much that they want to make it more regular, they could tour property listings with an agent from Slipher Smith & Frampton, the largest real estate broker in the Vale Valley, which also is owned by Vale Resorts.
They own everything. They're a fucking company town. Like, honest to God. This is, if you want to know what a, you want to see late stage capitalism, it's this. Because this is, and right now, it's, it's angling towards, more, middle class, middle upper class Americans. But keep in mind, there are people who used to live in these places, communities who used to live here, who used to operate a lot of small businesses. But now it's all been gobbled up. The same thing happens to a lot of small towns all over the country, from places like Walmart, big box stores, stuff like that. These companies come in and they outcompete because they just have the profits and the budgets to be able to do so, and they can take the losses for longer than any small business can. And then that small business gets eaten up because we don't offer any assistance, and we also don't really check the monopoly power of a lot of these big corporations. We need to do better about this in the United States. This should not be a thing that just kind of happens every day in America, and we just kind of brush it off.
While the most extreme example, the reality isn't far off from this. Facing natural pressures from shareholders to grow revenue, Vale is increasingly
it's always
focused on
a desire to
vertically
grow revenue
integrating the
because they
visitor
made an
experience.
investment and they want to
Why
make
should a
more.
Vale visitor give money to anyone
So,
but Vale itself?
they keep
They're developing
building more.
offerings for almost any transaction a visitor could make, then incentivizing allegiance to the Epic system by offering a slew of discounts. In the process, Vale is competing against local businesses. They're eliminating one of the few opportunities for local success to be tied to their success. What's left is the financial impossibility of minimum wage work in the Vale Valley. There are no easy answers to where a Vale employee might start their day. The conglomerate's new minimum wage is $20 an hour, a near fortune compared to minimum wage at most entry-level jobs in America, but most entry-level jobs aren't located here. In a narrow mountain valley bounded by two often impassable sections of highway, boasting some of the highest living costs in the world.
Yeah, and keep in mind, I make $20 an hour. I don't live anywhere near here, and that's like good. But if you're up in Vale and you're making $20 an hour, you're fucked. Because that $20 an hour isn't tied to, $20 an hour, that's our minimum wage, and that allows our workers to be able to, live normal lives. No. That $20 is like subsistence living. That is the amount that they've calculated. They've figured out that they can pay their employees, that they'll still show up, they'll eat just enough, but they won't ever really get out. They'll never be able to save, they're never going to buy a house, they won't be able to do any of this shit. They're always going to be stuck just working for the corpo until your fucking fingers burn off or fucking fall off because of frostbite. This, I guess, more accurately. The dream of every corpo is to have you work there until you're a fucking skeleton and never move above your station, ever.
Currently, the cheapest publicly listed apartment for rent within Vale city limits is going for $2,500 a month. Assuming 40 hours per week of work, which
more
might
than
come
twice
if the
my
slopes
rent
are
down
busy
here.
and the snow is abundant, a given lift operator might make $3,200 a month. Therefore, after tax, they might make ever so slightly more than what it costs to keep an apartment in the town in which they work. But of course, in a small town environment like this, and considering the competitiveness of housing, most rentals never make it beyond the classifieds. There one can find deals like this $1,150 a month room in an apartment in Edwards. A 20-minute drive away, assuming one pays for the $425 a year Vale employee parking pass.
Jesus.
This gets closer
fact,
to
you
the
have to pay for
28%
fucking
of
parking.
income financial experts recommend spending on housing. To get under that 28%, it's going to require an apartment with roommates somewhere like Eagle or Gypsy. more than 30 miles or 50 kilometers from Vail. Vail Resorts understands this financial impossibility, and their fix is to act as both the employer and the landlord with their employee housing program, offering hundreds of rooms near the resort for $500 or $600.
Jesus Christ. It's fucking company towns. I think I said it earlier as just kind of like, because that's what it feels like, but it is. They're offering the housing. You basically live, it's just a company town.
A month. These tiny dorm-style accommodations are in tremendous demand, often filling up months before the start of the season, but never accommodating all workers, leaving hundreds to work through the financial impossibility of the free market. The truth is, these jobs don't need to be sustainable. Vail doesn't need to offer a living wage to fill its rosters. The pure prospect of being able to live in the mountains is attractive enough to incentivize plenty of financially flexible young people into working a season or two on the slopes.
Also, he says financially flexible. Let's be transparent. Financially flexible means rich and doesn't actually have to worry about paying the bills. This is like the, oh yeah, I have like a ton of money. I just work this job that I lose money because I already have a ton of money. I don't actually have to make money doing this. Like,
even if
I just have to keep, I have to, you know, as long as I mostly cover my costs.
Mission statement even implies this.
Yeah.
It reads, quote, "Our mission is simple, to create the experience of a lifetime for our employees so they can, in turn, provide exceptional experiences for our guests. Creating a job so rewarding people are willing to effectively pay to do it is no crime, but what it does..."
Yeah, and if you're poor, that's the only time there's nobody who's actually poor who would ever take this. It's only like you know, rich kids or like college kids who you know, will just get money to do this. Parents will just give them an allowance to live on while they fuck off in the mountains for like a summer and, you know, say that it's, you know, I'm really working here, Dad. Like, no.
What it does mean is that Vail's money doesn't stay in the Vail Valley. It primarily goes to a transient, short-term labor pool that'll be gone come spring, never integrating with the long-term local community.
Yeah, and it's all
of course,
wasted.
There are some resort jobs that require more specialized skills and pay more, but not many. Ski patrol, for example, is a dangerous job that requires skills that take years to learn.
I remember
so it's a
Katamari
role typically
Damacy.
filled by
Fun game.
careerists rather than transient seasonal workers. But in Vail's case, that only justifies a $21 minimum wage.
Wait, what?
Over the resort-wide.
Wait, what? Say that again.
There are some resort jobs that require more specialized skills and pay more, but not many. Ski patrol, for example, is a dangerous job that requires skills that take years to learn. So it's a role typically filled by careerists rather than transient seasonal workers. In Vail's case, that only justifies a $21 minimum wage.
Wow. That, dude, okay. Tell me that's not how it is. Okay, have you ever worked a job where, have you ever worked like just a regular, you know, retail, or even you know, if you work food service or something like that, and you're talking with your coworkers, we're like, oh wait, how much do you make? And they're like, oh, I make like 17. You're like, oh, I make 17 too. And then you turn to like your manager or whoever, and you're like, wait, how much do managers make? And they turn to you and they give you that look of like, I make 19. And you're like, eh. And it's like amazing. Just this whole time you would expect, one would think that if you're a manager, you probably make like at least a decent amount more. But at least in my experience, I've worked like a number of different jobs in different kind of fields. And almost every time the fucking managers do not ever make anything worth, you know, more than more than like regular workers. It's always one of those where it's like, oh, you can have like $1 more an hour, but you're going to take on 2 to 3 times the responsibility. It's, man, never. Oh man. I don't think there are a few times I've taken management positions where I've felt like it was actually worth it instead of just being a regular worker. You know, like it's good for the resume, certainly, but man, sometimes the compensation is just fucking trash. God, that's awful. You go through all that to be basically safety on the slopes, and you get $1 extra an hour. Of course. Who doesn't know about Katamari Damacy? I've been playing a bunch of PS2 games lately, too.
Bump over the resort-wide $20 minimum. But Vail's a big business, right? It's a publicly traded company on the New York Stock Exchange. Surely it must have HR and marketing and vice presidents and executives and all the higher paying jobs that make for more sustainable urban economies.
I mean, that is
right?
probably where a lot of the
Well,
money's going.
yes, Vail does have that, just not in Vail. In 2006, the conglomerate moved about 100 of its administrative positions 2 hours down the road to an office park outside Denver.
Where is, let's see, that's north. That's on the east side. Oh, wow, that's on the east. Wait, that's, yeah, Vail's north, right? No, Vail's east, isn't it? Or that's west. I'm stupid. Vail's west. So that's probably the north side of Denver. North side.
Because of the living costs that Vail itself pushed up, it was simply cheaper for Vail to run Vail away from Vail.
Armed, I can't tell if you're being funny or just being
it slowly cut local management positions
being
and
honest.
aggregated administrative tasks in this Denver headquarters.
But anybody who doesn't know
resorts
Katamari
themselves were
Damacy,
left with few jobs outside
they don't know true
operations,
joy.
hospitality, and retail.
That's all I have to say.
Lowest paying, least
You don't know real
sustainable
joy,
positions.
and so you've
Therefore,
rolled an
in
enormous
sum,
ball
what
full
happens
of
when
random
Vail
junk,
buys
and
resort is
sometimes
simple.
people.
Income potential lowers as jobs get slashed, and cost of living rockets skyward as the volume of visitors and therefore demand does too. Now, Vail itself, the resort from which the conglomerate was born, was never truly a town. It was a development from day one, so at least within city limits, the argument can be made that nobody's been displaced. There's no history of habitation before the lifts started spinning.
Yeah.
But this is not the case everywhere. 60 miles or 100 kilometers away, in the tiny idyllic town of Crested Butte, the
fucking
Facebook
Google
comments on
Map,
the 2018
scroll.
announcement of Vail's purchase of the local resort read like those of an obituary.
Yeah, what is this? Vail Resorts to acquire Okemo Mountain Resort, Mount Sunapee Resort, Crested Butte Mountain Resort, and Stevens Pass Resort, and Jesus Christ. Honest to God, the corporate consolidation in this country also is out of fucking hand. You got to give it up to the UK government for not letting Activision buy, or Microsoft buy Activision. Let's see, hoping for the best. We just have to organize enough to communicate community values that affect our behavior. It's our town in which we are allowing them to operate. Yeah, good luck with that. I was there when we gave the Mullers a parade and they spoke in front of the elbow. CB needs to hold awake. I feel they totally misrepresented the people of Crested Butte. Okay, by selling to Vail makes me sick. People should, yeah. Imagine living in like a town like this, and you read this, and you're like, my town just got sold to, like, the town itself just got sold. You know, the local restaurant that I might know the owner, I know the waitress, or I have my own seat or whatever. That's just gonna be gone in 10 years because this corpo is gonna come and fucking run everybody out of town and eventually just turn into another generic resort town that nobody gets to live in anymore because it's too damn expensive, and none of these people can afford to live in these areas once they've been turned into these resort towns. It's fucking awful.
This was a ski resort that ran a marketing campaign titled "This Is Not
Sad.
Vail" and a locale referred to as the last great Colorado ski town, noted for its increasingly unique blend of affordability, remoteness, and skiing prowess.
Analog sticks.
Now, this tenuous balance.
I feel okay. Armed. I feel like there's not really that many people who like Anita Sarkeesian. Even on the left, most people are like, yeah, this person doesn't really understand what they're critiquing. Like, I get that Anita Sarkeesian became a big, I don't know, like, figure online, but I can tell you as a leftist, she wasn't really that, she wasn't really that preferred on the left. It was really more, the only time people really would defend her were from the really outrageous sexual harassment stuff that came her way. But most people recognize, like, she had the beginnings of good arguments, but they mostly kind of fell apart. At least the people that I watched back in the day during the Gamergate era, it all was kind of, I found myself kind of being like, the sexual harassment's gross and her takes are not amazing. Again, she had the start of good arguments, and then they kind of fell apart the more she talked, I found, because you really have to have a good knowledge of video games and I think the culture around them to really make the kind of critique she was making. And I don't think she was the best person to make to make those, or at least the most well-rounded person to make those. As you just did. Wasn't that like 2014? I don't remember. God, it's been a long time since Gamergate. I'm an old vet, so I remember some of the comments, but I did back out of a lot of I took a big step back from the gaming industry during that time, admittedly, because it was all such a mess, and I remember being like, I don't want any part of this. This is nonsense. 2014, 2015, yeah, I was over by. Well, 2016, that's when the elections came up, and that's when that's when that took over. That was the big narrative.
It was going to get disrupted by the
Gamergate was
largest
a mess.
skiing conglomerate, and it was absolutely disrupted. Whereas in the month of Vail's announcement, the average sales price of a single-family home in Crested Butte sat at $762,000. Today, less than 5 years
God, in 2015, this is like at what, 425?
on, it skyrocketed to over 1.2 million. The same all too predictable story played out once again. Big tracts of open land were split up, sold off, and converted into $5, $10, or $15 million ranches, downtown houses previously home to local.
And there's a good reason to do this also. I want to comment, the reason why, you might say to yourself, why the fuck would you buy up these big plots of lands and put these really, really big ass $9 million, $5 million ranches on them, right? Like, why would you do that? And the reason for doing that isn't necessarily that you're going to get somebody to buy it. Somebody probably will, but strategically you want to buy up these big chunks of land, turn them into ranches, and then like kind of keep doing that so that you eliminate kind of the available land, and you drive up scarcity, which will eventually drive up the rest of the housing costs and lead people to sell their homes while they kind of still can. And then when you get that land, you can, if you're a private corporation, you can buy, I don't know, fucking Suzanne's house down the street, who lives in like a townhouse unit, along with her other neighbors that have to sell because they can't afford to live there anymore. And then you've got like a whole block, and then you can turn that into like, resort style apartment living or whatever. But the whole like buying big plots of land is to drive up scarcity in those areas and drive up housing prices.
Working just blocks away were bought up, renovated, and sold as second homes and investment properties to those earning an income in Dallas, Miami, or New York. The workforce that kept the town ticking was pushed farther and farther.
Yeah, wasn't Zoe Quinn like a, if I remember correctly, she was a like a journalist. I think that's, because she was the journalist that I guess was sleeping with some or she was a game dev, I think. I'm foggy on the details. It's been a long time since I thought about Gamergate. But if I remember correctly, she was a game dev who was sleeping with, was it IGN? It might have been, we'll just say it's IGN because I don't know who else was left back then. I mean, who was around back then? It was like IGN, Game Trailers was around. The only hardcore games are on mobile.
Farther down valley, and the small city of Gunnison increasingly became the bedroom of decades-long Crested Butte locals. There was a brief moment of homeostasis in the North American ski industry, an era when it could all coexist. But in today's reality, skiing is simply extracted.
Late stage capitalism, baby.
Comes in, and despite good intentions, it pushes up the cost of living, it crowds out the locals, and then ultimately, that money doesn't go to the locals it's displacing, it goes to the shareholders of a conglomerate. But this phenomenon is familiar to these towns given their histories in mining, logging, and other resource-based economies. The way their population
the fight has always been against Corpos,
around quite literally extracting value from the surrounding nature. The story of a
didn't they give they gave the fucking console version of Cyberpunk like a pretty shit score, if I remember correctly. But the PC version they gave a really good score, which I don't know if I agree with. Granted, I've only played it on consoles, but I don't know. I don't know if I would have given it. I'd probably give it like an 8. I don't know if I would have given it. I could have sworn they gave it a 9.
Mining conglomerates is a tale so archetypical that it hardly bears repeating. In fact, the similarities between Crested Butte's history and the plot of the movie Avatar are so striking that many have pondered if the film was directly inspired by the town.
Yeah.
Skiing was supposed to be the way out, the path forward, a way to have it all. Income to live in America's most striking nature, coming from an industry far less destructive to that nature. But the long-run consequences of this...
Okay, yeah, they gave the PC release like a 9. I don't know if I'd go that far. I really like Cyberpunk, but I don't know if I would go so far as say to 9. I would have probably done like an 8, personally. Whoa, what the fuck? Okay, there we go.
Turned out to be the destruction of the towns themselves. It appears a devil's bargain. You can have the nature and the town, but not the income to live there. You can have the town and the income, but not the nature to enjoy.
Yeah, call me Bullet Club.
So many of the most pristine slices of the mountains have chosen.
Tekken supremacist over here. There's a reason why my
unnatural forces can
my BRB is for Tekken.
Allow for a careful, tenuous balance of the three factors, but it's
Street Fighter looks good though. The new one. I'm not gonna play it because I suck at Street
Therefore,
Fighter.
Vale and other conglomerates
Tekken Tag, fuck yeah.
create this devil's bargain.
The only person I'm good with in Street Fighter is Jury. That was the only person I ever really gravitated towards. I was never. Well, no, wait, no. Who is the? Is it Vega, the homeboy with the blades? I was okay with him a little bit, but I played a little bit of Street Fighter 4. I think that was 4, and some Cross Tekken. Cross Tekken wasn't very good. It wasn't awful, but it wasn't great.
Their influences made the decisions for the communities. Small, delicate towns were forced into option number 3.
With thighs.
They'd have jobs more than they could possibly need or even want, and they'd have nature, even if it'd be stressed to its limits by an influx of pass-holding visitors, but they'd no longer have affordable access to their own town. It's a tricky thing, housing affordability. Even the largest cities, states, and even countries have repeatedly failed to stop these savage economic forces that break the careful balance of income and cost. So the issue is certainly
it's just housing consolidation under corporate rule. That's like what it is, though. Like I feel like sometimes we make it feel like it's more complex than what it is, when what it actually is like specifically in terms of these like ski towns. Is these corporations coming in and buying up so much of the real estate and just squeezing out everybody else because there is a laissez-faire approach to property rights. The local government will just be like, yeah, sure you can buy as much land as you want, and that's probably something we need to what's the word I'm looking for? Need to reassess in a lot of these places. I don't know. I don't even know if any of these towns can be, if you can even go back. Like there's a good possibility that there is no going back now. These places are fucked. You can't live there. They're ski towns now. There is no going back. But to prevent it in the future, there needs to be some kind of community control of some of these, some kind of democratic rule. Because you can bet that a lot of the people who lived in Vale, for example, never voted to have their entire communities, gentrified. It's not even really gentrification, I guess, but gentrified to the point of being a resort town and then getting squeezed out of it by rising housing costs. Nobody voted for that. They were okay with the company coming in and running some of the resort, infrastructure. But otherwise, it was like, hey, we still would like to be able to live in the place in which we are. Also, where is this? This is a nice little. I like this blue. No, never mind. I like the blue roof of this, but I don't like the rest of it. The rest of that looks kind of creepy. This is a nice little mountain or a hill town. You kind of gotta. I kind of like this. I like this one in the middle here, with next between this red roof or orangey roof and this White House. That's pretty nice. I hate this modern architecture, though. I fucking hate a lot of this modern architecture. Ugh.
Not unique.
Disgusting.
The primary difference
kind of
is that they're
no waifus or
phenomenally
demon
more vulnerable to
using
outside
like in
forces.
Persona 5.
These
I
towns
still need
are
to play
truly
Persona 5.
tiny.
It's on my
Aspen, Telluride, and
well, I need to play
Monterey
any of the
combined have a
Personas.
full-time
I don't know which one to
population
jump into,
smaller than
and they're also
innumerable
kind of
American
daunting
towns whose
games
names
to
you'll never even hear,
to start.
let alone know.
I just don't know where to begin.
One small outside action, one boardroom decision to sign on the dotted line and sell to the highest bidder has a potential
and it's
to
like one guy
fundamentally
too.
alter
It's
and
one guy who
fracture
makes the
an
decision
entire
to
community.
destroy an
But
entire
this might
town.
just be the tragic trade-off of small
Capitalism.
town life.
Capitalism.
It's the story of the local factory getting automated, the story of the mine closing up shop, the new interstate shortcutting the old highway, the railroad stopping service. Remote places are vulnerable.
I want more railroads,
This doesn't
goddammit.
necessarily need to be the conclusion of life in these mountain communities. It does seem an inevitable step in their perpetual evolution.
No, it's not. Oh, I don't like that. I don't like that that's the natural step. It's not. There is no natural step when it comes to economics and housing. It is what these are all choices that we have made. All of them. Every single one of them are choices that we've made. You know the thing that they tell, like at the end of all YouTube videos where they tell you to like click on one of these like things to watch more videos. Yeah, I've been meaning to film one of those. So that's what I was doing. I was just setting it up to film one.